The metal bench was a sheet of ice against my back, a cruel joke in the suffocating heat of the Riverside Police Department's single holding cell. It had been 3 hours. 3 hours of watching dust motes dance in the sliver of morning sun that fought its way through the grime-streaked window high above. 3 hours of the same stale air, thick with the scent of cheap coffee and industrial cleaner, coating my tongue. Officer Lou, a man whose punch strained the buttons of his uniform, sat at his desk, his fingers, thick as sausages, pecking out a rhythm on the keyboard 20 feet away. Click-clack, click-clack. Each sound drilled into my skull, a relentless metronome counting down to, what? Another court date? Another lecture from a judge who saw me as nothing more than a statistic? The throbbing behind my eyes was a dull drum, the sick twist in my gut a familiar companion. I didn't deserve this, not this time. My rap sheet was a comedy of errors, a roadmap of poor choices, 2 DUIs, a suspended license I'd driven on anyway, and a general air of wasting potential. But last night, I was stone cold sober. Heading home from the late shift at the warehouse, the drone of the highway a soothing balm after hours of lifting boxes. Then she came out of nowhere, a woman, stumbled off the curb and into my path. Her movements were wrong, a lurching, shuffling gait, like her legs were disconnected from her brain. I slammed the brakes, felt the sickening thump as her body rolled across the hood, a nightmare in slow motion. The scream that ripped from my throat was pure, unadulterated panic. Not guilt, not yet, just visceral horror. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the door, tumbling out onto the asphalt. I expected a broken body, a pool of blood, a life draining away. But when I reached her, she was already trying to stand. Those wet, gurgling sounds started, a sound like water trying to force its way through a clogged pipe. Her eyes, they were wrong, glazed over, milky at the edges, fixed on something I couldn't see. Her jaw worked, opening and closing, snapping at the air as if trying to catch flies. I backed away, fumbling for my phone, trying to call a 911 to make sense of the madness. That's when Lou's cruiser pulled up. The harsh glare of the headlights on my face, on the bloodied woman, on my still running car. My history, a neon sign flashing guilt. He cuffed me, read me my rights in that monotone drone cops perfected through rote repetition. He didn't listen to my pleas, my desperate insistence that something was terribly wrong with her. He just looked at me, a shrug in his eyes, and brought me here. That was 7 a.m. It was almost 10 a.m. now. The cell across from mine held Eugene, a man in his mid-40s with stringy, unkempt hair and a paint-splattered jacket. He'd been picked up trying to break into his ex-wife's house, though he swore on a stack of Bibles he was just trying to get his dog back. We'd exchanged maybe 10 words. He mostly sat, picking at his fingernails, muttering to himself. The television, mounted high on the wall, played local news at a low volume. A perpetually smiling anchor with unnaturally white teeth prattled on about traffic delays on the interstate. Normal, mundane, the kind of broadcast that made the world feel perfectly routine, as if the axis hadn't even wobbled. Then Lou answered his phone. His voice, usually gruff, cut through the quiet. "Yeah, dispatch. What's the... Wait, slow down. What do you mean multiple attacks?" I straightened, the cold metal digging into my back. Eugene stopped picking his nails, his head tilting slightly, listening. The click-clack of the keyboard had ceased. How many units? Lou was standing now, his free hand raking through his thinning hair, a gesture of deep agitation. Jesus Christ, all of them? What about county? The morning light, once so clear, seemed to thin, as if the dust particles had multiplied, clouding the air. My pulse hammered in my ears, a frantic tattoo. That primal animal instinct, the one that screams danger, was screaming now. Something was shifting, violently. Lou hung up. He stood there for a long moment, staring at his desk, as if expecting it to offer answers. Then, slowly, he moved to the window, pulled back the vertical blinds, and peered out at Main Street. "What's going on?" I called out, my voice too loud in the sudden quiet. He didn't answer, just kept staring. Eugene shuffled to the bars of his cell. "Hey man, what's happening out there?" Still nothing from Lou. On the TV, the anchor's perfect smile had frozen. She touched her earpiece, listening intently. Her professional veneer cracked, just for a second, revealing a raw, naked fear underneath. We're getting reports of incidents across the city," she stammered, her voice pitching higher. "Multiple 911 calls coming in regarding violent attacks. We don't have all the details yet, but authorities are asking residents to—" The broadcast cut to shaky cell phone footage. A street I didn't recognize. People running, screaming, a terrified cacophony. And there, in the center of the frame, a man was crouched over something. Someone. His head snapped up at the camera, and even through the grainy video, I could see his face was smeared with dark liquid. His mouth moved, chewing, in a slow, sickening rhythm. My stomach lurched, threatening to rebel. "Jesus," Eugene whispered, his voice barely audible. The footage cut back to the studio. The anchor was pale, one hand pressed to her ear, listening, her eyes wide with unmasked terror. "Authorities are saying to stay indoors, lock your doors." Lou grabbed his radio, his hand shaking slightly. "Unit 12 to dispatch, Lou here. I need an update on—" A burst of static, then a voice, high-pitched and choked with panic. "George and Freeman are down at 5th and Broadway. They're not responding to commands. They just keep— Oh God, they're everywhere. I need backup. I need—" Gunshots, clear as day through the radio. 3 quick, sharp pops, then sustained automatic fire, then nothing but static again. Lou tried 2 more channels, got the same thing. Chaos, screaming, more gunshots, and then a chilling silence. He turned to look at us, his face drained of all color, etched with a terror that mirrored my own. "Stay quiet," he said, his voice a strained whisper. "Both of you, don't make a sound." "What's happening?" I demanded, gripping the cold bars, my knuckles white. "Let me out of here. Whatever's going on, I can help." "You're staying right where you are." His voice was sharp, final, but his hand trembled violently as he reached for his service weapon, checking the magazine, as if he didn't quite believe it was loaded. A car horn blared outside, long and sustained, a mournful wail. Then it cut off abruptly, replaced by a woman's scream, raw with terror, calling for help. Then, nothing. The TV, now back to the emergency alert screen, still flickered. But beneath the text, it cycled through more footage. A hospital entrance mobbed by people, some fleeing in terror, others staggering toward the doors with that same unnatural, lurching movement I'd seen in the woman I'd hit. A news helicopter shot showed plumes of smoke rising from multiple points across the city, a parking lot strewn with still bodies. "This can't be real," Eugene said, his voice barely a breath. "This is some kind of prank, right? Like that War of the Worlds thing." But it wasn't. I could see it in Lou's face, in the way his hand shook as he moved to the weapon locker, pulling out a shotgun, then a rifle, then boxes of ammunition. His movements were methodical, almost robotic, but the tremor in his fingers spoke volumes. This was real, and it was happening right now. The radio crackled again. All units, be advised. Hospitals are no longer secure. Repeat, do not transport injured to hospitals. The infection is spreading through medical facilities. If you have been bitten or scratched, quarantine yourself immediately. Symptoms present within—" The transmission cut off. Lou pulled out a shotgun, checked it, set it on his desk, then a rifle, then boxes of ammunition. His movements were methodical, but I could see the tremor in his fingers. This was real, and it was happening right now. "Officer," I said, my voice carefully calm, "you need to let us out. If something's happening out there, you're safer in here, with us." He didn't look at me. "Those bars will protect you better than being out on the street." "Protect us from what?" He finally turned, his eyes haunted. "From whatever the hell is turning people into animals." Eugene moved to the bars of his cell. "What do you mean, turning people? Like that footage? That's gotta be fake, special effects or something. Dispatch doesn't call in every available unit for special effects." Lou's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. George and Freeman were responding to reports of a disturbance at the hospital. Now they're not responding at all. His cell phone rang. He stared at it for a long moment, a battle raging on his face, before answering. "Leah, baby, where are you?" His face went slack, the last vestiges of hope draining away. "No, don't go there. Your mother's facility. It's not safe. Nothing's safe right now." He listened, his free hand gripping the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles went white. I know you need to see her, but please, just stay home. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in. I'll come get you as soon as I can." He closed his eyes, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. "I love you. Tell the kids I love them. I'll be there soon. I promise." He ended the call, his phone still pressed to his ear, as if he couldn't quite believe the conversation was over. Through the window, I could see movement on Main Street. At first, just a few people, walking with that same strange shuffling motion I'd seen in the woman I'd hit. Then more. A dozen, 2 dozen, all moving in the same direction, drawn by something I couldn't see or hear, a silent, horrifying tide. Lou noticed it too. He moved to the window, pulling the blinds wider. "My God," he whispered, his voice choked. "What is it?" Eugene asked, his voice cracking. "They're everywhere, coming from every direction." He stepped back from the window, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We need to lock this place down, now." He moved to the front door, checking the deadbolt. Then he grabbed a heavy wooden chair from one of the desks and wedged it under the handle. Started dragging filing cabinets, heavy steel behemoths toward the entrance, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Hey," I called out, my voice rising in panic. "You can't just leave us in here if something happens to you." "You'll be safer than me," he said, not looking at us, his back to us as he strained to move a cabinet. "Those bars are stronger than anything I can build." The front door rattled once, twice, then harder, as if someone or something was testing its strength. Lou froze, a filing cabinet halfway to the door. A face appeared in the window beside the entrance. Pale, hollow-eyed, jaw hanging slack. It pressed against the glass, leaving a smear of dark fluid, and began to moan. A low, constant sound that made my skin crawl, reverberating deep in my chest. Another face appeared, then another. Within seconds, there were 5 of them, all pressed against the window, all making that same horrifying sound, their eyes milky and devoid of life. "Get away from there!" Lou shouted, his voice cracking with fear and exhaustion. "Back off!" They didn't respond, didn't even seem to hear him, just kept pressing against the glass, hands rising to scrape at the window frame, a sickening sound like nails on a chalkboard. The door rattled again, harder this time. The wood groaned against the frame, a death rattle. Lou ran to finish the barricade, shoving the filing cabinet against the door just as something slammed into it from outside. The impact was hard enough to shift the cabinet, to make the whole frame shudder. "Officer!" Eugene's voice was high, panicked. "What the hell are those things?" "I don't know." Lou grabbed another desk, dragging it toward the door, his movements frantic. "Just stay quiet. Stay back from the bars." The front door to the station burst open. Officer Talbot stumbled through, his uniform torn, dark stains covering the front of his shirt. His face was pale, almost gray, and his eyes had a glassy, unfocused quality that made my stomach turn. He swayed in the doorway, a ghost of a man. "Talbot!" Lou dropped the desk, his eyes wide with horror and disbelief. "Jesus, what happened? Where's Patterson?" Talbot didn't answer, just stood there swaying, his mouth hanging open. A thin line of dark fluid dripped from his lower lip, spattering on the linoleum floor. Behind him, through the open door, I could see them. Dozens of those things, shuffling up the street toward the station, drawn by the movement, the noise, the living. "Talbot, we need to close that door," Lou said, moving toward him slowly, cautiously. "Come inside. Let me help you." That's when Talbot lunged. It was fast, impossibly fast for someone who looked half dead. He grabbed Lou by the shoulders, a sudden burst of inhuman strength, and drove him backward, slamming him against the wall beside the weapon locker. "Talbot, stop!" Lou tried to push him off, but Talbot's grip was like iron. "What are you doing?" Talbot's head snapped forward, jaws opening wide. Lou got his arm up just in time, and Talbot's teeth sank into his forearm instead of his throat. Lou screamed. The sound was raw, primal, filling the small station, echoing off the walls. Eugene and I were both yelling, rattling the bars of our cells, useless, trapped, forced to watch the nightmare unfold. Lou's free hand found his service weapon. He drew it, pressed it against Talbot's side, and fired 3 times in rapid succession. The shots were deafening in the enclosed space. Talbot jerked with each impact, but his jaw stayed locked on Lou's arm. Blood poured from the bullet wounds, but he didn't let go. Didn't even seem to feel it. Lou adjusted his aim upward and fired again. The bullet caught Talbot in the temple, and he finally released his grip, stumbling backward. But he didn't fall, didn't drop, just stood there swaying, head tilted at a wrong angle, with half his skull blown away, still reaching for Lou with twitching fingers. Lou fired again. This time, Talbot collapsed, hitting the floor and going still. Lou backed away, clutching his wounded arm. Blood soaked through his sleeve, dripping steadily onto the linoleum. What was... He didn't finish. Through the open door, they were coming. The moaning intensified as the mass of bodies outside realized the entrance was open. Lou ran to the door, using his good arm to slam it shut. He fumbled with the deadbolt, threw it, then grabbed the desk he dropped earlier and shoved it against the frame. Then the filing cabinet, then another desk. Bodies slammed into the door from outside, once, twice, then a sustained assault that made the whole wall shake. Lou kept building the barricade, his movements getting slower, more labored. His face was pale, shiny with sweat. The wound on his arm had stopped bleeding as much, but the edges of the bite were turning an ugly, bruised purple-gray. "Officer Lou," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice even, despite the terror coiling in my gut. "You need to sit down. You're hurt bad." "Can't." He shoved another cabinet against the door, gritting his teeth. Have to secure." The window beside the door shattered. Glass exploded inward, showering the floor. Immediately, arms reached through. So many arms, pale and grasping, fingers clutching at empty air. Lou grabbed the shotgun from his desk and fired twice into the window. The arms disappeared, replaced by others. He fired again and again. Then the shotgun clicked empty. The door was holding, but barely. The barricade shifted with each impact. Wood splintered around the frame. The deadbolt groaned, a metallic shriek, but held. Lou reloaded with shaking hands, dropping shells that clattered across the floor. His wounded arm hung limply at his side now. The gray discoloration was spreading up past his elbow, toward his shoulder. "How long?" Eugene asked quietly, his voice a strained whisper. "How long before you turn into one of them?" Lou looked at him, then at the wound. "I don't know. Talbot, he looked like he'd been infected for a while, maybe hours." He touched the bite gingerly, wincing. "This just happened. Maybe I've got time. Maybe." Another assault on the door cut him off. The barricade held, but I could see cracks forming in the doorframe. The hinges were pulling loose from the wall. Lou fired through the broken window again, then moved back, taking up a position between ourselves. He was breathing hard, favoring his wounded arm, and the grayish tint had spread to his neck now, visible above his collar. "Keys," he said suddenly, his voice raspy, fumbling at his belt with his good hand. "You'll need the keys for the weapon locker, the brass one." "Don't," I said, a desperate plea. "Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine." "No." He looked at me, and his eyes were clearer, more focused than they'd been since Talbot bit him. A chilling clarity. "No, I'm not. And when I turn, when I become one of those things, you'll need to be able to defend yourselves." He tried to unhook the key ring from his belt, but his fingers weren't working right. They fumbled at the clip, slipping off, unable to grip. "Can't. Fingers won't." He looked at his hand like it belonged to someone else, a detached horror in his gaze. A tremor ran through his body, small at first, then stronger, a violent shiver. His jaw clenched, muscles in his neck standing out like cables. Sweat poured down his face despite the cool air. "It's starting," he gasped, his voice choked. "I can feel it, something spreading inside." He staggered to the barricade, using his body weight to shore it up as another wave of bodies hit from outside. The moaning was constant now, a wall of sound that seemed to vibrate in my chest. "Officer Lou," I gripped the bars, shaking them. "Move away from there. Get back." But he stayed put, wedging his shoulder against a filing cabinet that was starting to slide. "Have to. Hold them off." Black fluid leaked from his nose. He wiped at it absently, staring at his hand when it came away dark. "What is this?" Another tremor. His knees buckled, but he caught himself on the barricade. Through the broken window, I could see them. So many of them now, pressed against each other, all reaching toward the station. Some were missing limbs. Others had gaping wounds. One had no lower jaw, but still made that terrible moaning sound through its exposed throat. The door frame cracked. Just a small split in the wood, but enough to let fingers push through. They wormed into the gap, pulling, widening it. "Can't. Fingers won't." He looked at his hand like it belonged to someone else, a detached horror in his gaze. A tremor ran through his body. Small at first, then stronger, a violent shiver. His jaw clenched, muscles in his neck standing out like cables. Sweat poured down his face despite the cool air. "It's starting," he gasped, his voice choked. "I can feel it, something spreading inside." He staggered to the barricade, using his body weight to shore it up as another wave of bodies hit from outside. The moaning was constant now, a wall of sound that seemed to vibrate in my chest. "Officer Lou," I gripped the bars, shaking them. "Move away from there. Get back." But he stayed put, wedging his shoulder against a filing cabinet that was starting to slide. "Have to. Hold them off." Black fluid leaked from his nose. He wiped at it absently, staring at his hand when it came away dark. "What is this?" Another tremor. His knees buckled, but he caught himself on the barricade. Through the broken window, I could see them. So many of them now, pressed against each other, all reaching toward the station. Some were missing limbs. Others had gaping wounds. One had no lower jaw, but still made that terrible moaning sound through its exposed throat. The door frame cracked. Just a small split in the wood, but enough to let fingers push through. They wormed into the gap, pulling, widening it. Lou fired his pistol at the fingers. Missed. Fired again. Hit. The fingers disappeared, but others took their place immediately. He turned to look at us, and I saw something in his face that made my blood run cold. Recognition. Understanding. He knew what was happening to him, knew what he was becoming. "Promise me," he said, his voice thick, slurred. "When I'm gone, when I'm not me anymore, you get out. You survive. You don't let this be for nothing." "We promise," Eugene said, his voice trembling. "But you're not." "I am." Lou slid down the barricade to the floor, his back pressed against a filing cabinet. "I can feel it, inside my head. Something's changing. My thoughts are getting fuzzy, hard to focus." He looked at the keys still attached to his belt, then at his useless fingers. With his good hand, he reached across and worked the clip, finally getting the key ring loose. It fell to the floor beside him with a metallic clink. "Brass key," he mumbled, his voice fading. "Weapon locker. Don't be stupid. Aim for the head. Only thing that stops him." His eyes were losing focus now, the pupils dilating until they almost swallowed the color. The gray discoloration had reached his jaw, creeping up the side of his face in visible tendrils. "Leah," he whispered, a name, a ghost. "Tell Leah. Tell her I tried. Tell her I'm sorry." Another massive impact against the door. The top hinge tore partially free, and the door tilted inward. The barricade shifted, sliding back several inches. Lou didn't seem to notice. He just sat there against the filing cabinet, staring at nothing as the infection spread through his body like poison through water. Outside, the moaning intensified. They knew. Somehow they knew the barrier was failing. And inside, Officer Lou's breathing grew shallow and ragged as the minutes ticked by. The sun was higher now, approaching noon. 6 hours since I'd been arrested. 6 hours since the world made sense. I watched the infected mass outside continue to grow, watched Lou's skin turn grayer by the minute, watched the barricade shift and groan under the constant assault. The keys lay on the floor 6 feet from my cell, close enough to see, but impossibly far away. And the first part of my 12-hour nightmare was just beginning. The silence inside the station was worse than the moaning outside. Lou sat against the barricade, his back pressed to a filing cabinet, staring at nothing. His chest rose and fell in shallow, irregular breaths. The gray discoloration had spread across half his face now, making him look like a corpse that hadn't figured out it was dead yet. The keys lay on the floor where he dropped them, maybe 6 feet from my cell, close enough that I could see the brass key he'd mentioned, smaller than the others, probably for the weapon locker. Far enough that it might as well have been on the moon. Eugene hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. He sat in the corner of his cell, knees drawn up, staring at Lou with the kind of hollow expression you see in people who've given up. Outside, the moaning continued, constant, relentless. Through the broken window, I could see arms still reaching, bodies still pressing against the barricade. The door groaned under the weight of dozens of them, the wood creaking, the frame slowly giving way. It was just past noon. The sun hung high and hot, turning the station into an oven. Sweat dripped down my back, soaking through my shirt. The smell was getting worse too, a combination of stale blood, Talbot's corpse still lying by the weapon locker, and something else, something chemical and wrong that seemed to radiate from the infected outside. "How much longer?" Eugene finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know." I kept my eyes on Lou, watching for any sign of change. He said maybe 15 minutes. It's been longer than that. Maybe he's fighting it. Maybe, but I didn't believe it. I'd seen the footage on TV, heard the radio chatter. Once you were bitten, it was only a matter of time. The only question was how much time. Lou's head moved, just slightly, tilting to one side like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. His eyes remained unfocused, staring into the middle distance. "Officer Lou?" I called out, my voice tight. "Can you hear me?" No response. His jaw worked slowly, opening and closing, but no sound came out. The barricade shifted. A filing cabinet scraped backward an inch, then another. The door frame splintered further, and more fingers wormed through the gap, grasping blindly. "It's not gonna hold much longer," Eugene said, stating the obvious. "I know. And when it fails?" "I know." I cut him off before he could finish the thought. Because finishing it meant acknowledging that we were trapped in here with a dying cop and a horde of those things about to break through. Meant acknowledging that the keys on the floor were our only chance, and they were impossible to reach. Lou's body convulsed. Not the violent shaking from before, but a single hard spasm that made him gasp. When it passed, he slumped further against the cabinet, and I saw fresh black fluid leak from his nose. "Lou," I tried again, my voice urgent. "If you can still hear me, you need to push those keys closer. Just a few feet, that's all we need." His head turned toward my voice. For a second, I thought there was recognition in his eyes, understanding. But then they glazed over again, and his head lolled back against the cabinet. The TV had been silent since the emergency broadcast ended, but now it flickered back to life. A different official, this one looking haggard and terrified, read from a prepared statement with shaking hands, confirming reports of infrastructure collapse in Memphis, Nashville, and Knoxville. "The National Guard has been deployed, but," he paused, listening to something off camera. "We're now receiving word that the Guard has suffered significant casualties. Military bases in Jackson and Chattanooga report 70% infection rates among personnel." The broadcast cut out. When it returned, it was just the emergency alert screen again. Stark white text on blue. Shelter in place. Do not attempt to evacuate. 70%, Eugene said numbly. The military's gone. It's all gone. I didn't answer. Couldn't, because he was right. If the military couldn't contain this, then nobody could. Outside, a new sound joined the moaning. Sirens. Multiple sirens, getting closer. Then gunfire, sharp and staccato, maybe 3 blocks away. It lasted 10 seconds, then silence. The moaning grew louder, more frenzied. They were drawn to the gunfire, converging on wherever those shots had come from, which meant more of them were coming. More would be pressing against our already failing barricade. Lou's eyes snapped into focus, just for a moment, but it was enough. "Buster, Eugene," he said, his voice thick and slurred. "Got a dog?" Eugene moved to the bars, hope flickering in his eyes. Yeah, I got a dog, Buster. He's a good boy." "Take care of him." Lou's head drooped. "Dogs don't deserve this." "I will," Eugene promised, tears in his eyes. "I promise." Lou's gaze shifted to me. "Woman, you hit. She was already gone. Not your fault." The words hit me harder than I expected. After all those hours of guilt, of wondering if I'd killed an innocent person, hearing that absolution from a dying cop broke something inside me. "Thank you," I managed, my voice choked. He tried to say something else, but it came out as a wet gurgle. More black fluid poured from his mouth, and he coughed, spraying it across the floor. When the coughing fit ended, he was breathing faster, shallower. "Keys," he gasped, looking down at him. "Can't move my arms." He tried to reach for him, but his arm just twitched uselessly at his side. The gray had spread down to his fingertips now, and I could see the veins in his hands standing out black against his skin. "It's okay," I said, a lump forming in my throat. "You did enough. You built the barricade. You gave us a chance." "Not enough." His eyes found mine, and there was such pain in them. Not physical pain, something deeper. The pain of a man who'd sworn to protect people and was about to become the very thing they needed protection from. "Leah, kids, won't make it to them." A tear rolled down his cheek, cutting a clean line through the gray. The door frame cracked louder. The top hinge tore completely free, and the door tilted at a dangerous angle. The barricade held it in place, but barely. Desks and filing cabinets were sliding backward with each impact, scraping across the floor in inches. "It's okay," I said, a lump forming in my throat. "You did enough. You built the barricade. You gave us a chance." "Not enough." His eyes found mine, and there was such pain in them. Not physical pain, something deeper. The pain of a man who'd sworn to protect people and was about to become the very thing they needed protection from. "Leah, kids, won't make it to them." A tear rolled down his cheek, cutting a clean line through the gray. The door frame cracked louder. The top hinge tore completely free, and the door tilted at a dangerous angle. The barricade held it in place, but barely. Desks and filing cabinets were sliding backward with each impact, scraping across the floor in inches. "How long do we have?" Eugene asked, his voice shaking. I looked at the barricade, at the way it shifted and groaned. "Minutes, maybe less. And then we figure out how to get those keys and arm ourselves before they get to us." "That's not a plan. That's suicide. You got a better idea?" He didn't answer. Lou's breathing changed. It became ragged, labored, each breath sounding like it was being dragged through broken glass. His whole body tensed, muscles going rigid, and I knew we were running out of time. "Lou," I said urgently, my voice raw. "Listen to me. Listen. You need to kick those keys. Use your feet. Push them toward my cell." He looked at the keys, then at his legs, tried to move them. His right foot twitched, scraping against the floor, but that was all. The infection had spread too far. He lost control. "Can't," he whispered, a sound of profound despair. "God, I can't." Another spasm racked his body. This one lasted longer, his back arching, fingers clawing at the air. When it passed, he went completely limp, head lolling to the side. For 10 seconds, he didn't breathe at all. Then his chest rose in a sharp, gasping inhale, and his eyes opened. They were completely gray now, no trace of color left, empty, dead, but still moving, still tracking movement. "No," Eugene breathed. "Not yet. Please, not yet." But it was too late. Lou, or the thing that had been Lou, pushed itself up from the floor with jerky, stiff movements. Its head turned toward us. And even though those eyes showed no recognition, no humanity, I could have sworn it was looking directly at me. It took a step forward, stumbled, caught itself on a desk. The name tag on its chest, Lou R., caught the light, and I had to look away. The barricade chose that moment to fail. The door collapsed inward with a crash that made both Eugene and I jump. Filing cabinets toppled, desks slid across the floor, and through the opening poured the infected. 5 of them at first, then 10, then too many to count. They spilled into the station like water through a broken dam, tripping over the debris, over each other, but never stopping, always moving forward. The thing that had been Lou turned toward them. For a second, I thought it might attack them, might give us some kind of opening, but they ignored each other completely, moved around each other without conflict, without interaction. All of them focused on the same thing, us. "Back of the cell," I shouted at Eugene. "Get as far back as you can." We both pressed ourselves into our corners as the infected swarmed into the station. The moaning was deafening now, echoing off the walls, vibrating in my bones. I could smell them, rot and chemicals, and something sickly sweet that made my stomach turn. One of them, a heavy-set figure with half his face missing, reached my cell first, grabbed the bars and shook them, making the whole wall rattle. When that didn't work, it pressed his face between the bars, jaw snapping, trying to reach me, even though I was 8 feet away. More joined it. They packed themselves against the cell wall, arms reaching through, fingers grasping. I counted 6, then 8, then stopped counting because it didn't matter. There were too many. Eugene's cell was getting the same treatment. He was screaming now, incoherent terror as they pressed against his bars, reaching for him, moaning that horrible sound. The thing that had been Lou moved through the crowd without being molested. It walked right past a dozen infected like they weren't there, making its way toward my cell with that same jerky, stiff gait. It stopped at the bars, tilted its head, and something in that gesture, something in the way it looked at me, was so familiar that I had to remind myself that Lou was gone. Then it reached through the bars with both arms, and there was nothing familiar about it anymore, just hunger, just that relentless need to feed. I pressed myself harder against the back wall, but there was nowhere else to go. The infected packed the cell wall 3 deep now, all reaching, all moaning, all. Some of them were so badly damaged they could barely stand, missing limbs, gaping wounds, bones showing through torn flesh. But they kept coming anyway. The keys lay on the floor in the middle of the station, surrounded by infected feet. Impossible to reach now, even if I could get my cell door open. We were gonna die in here, trapped, helpless, while those things slowly figured out how to get through the bars. Then I saw it. One of the infected, a thin figure with stringy hair, stepped on the key ring. Its foot caught on the metal loop, and when it moved forward, it dragged the keys with it. "Eugene!" I pointed frantically. "The keys! That one has the keys!" He looked, saw what I was talking about. The infected had pulled the keys maybe 3 feet before its foot came free. But 3 feet closer, 3 feet, that might make a difference. "How do we get it?" Eugene asked, his voice strained. "I don't know. We need to—" I stopped, staring at the infected crowd in my cell, at the way they all pressed toward the back where I was standing. "We need to move them." "What?" "They follow movement, sound. They're attracted to us." I looked at Eugene. "If we move to the front of our cells, they'll follow, clear out the metal." "And then what? We're still locked in here. One problem at a time. I moved to the front corner of my cell, as close to the bars as I dared. Sure enough, the infected shifted, following me. The thing that had been Lou moved with them, pressing itself against the bars directly in front of me. Eugene did the same in his cell. The infected swarmed to the front, packing themselves against the bars, reaching for us, but it cleared the middle of the station. I could see the keys now, lying maybe 4 feet from my cell door. "Okay," I said, breathing hard. "Now what?" Eugene looked at me, at the keys, at the mass of infected between us and any chance of survival. "Now we pray." The barricade wasn't completely gone. Some filing cabinets still blocked part of the doorway, but more infected were pushing through, climbing over the debris, adding to the crowd already inside. The station was filling up fast. Through the broken window, I could see Main Street. Bodies everywhere, some standing, some lying still, smoke rising from buildings, cars burning. The entire world reduced to chaos and death in less than 6 hours. The thing that had been Lou grabbed the bars with both hands and pulled. The metal groaned, but held. It pulled harder, and I heard something crack. Not the bars, something in its arms, bones breaking. But it didn't stop, didn't seem to feel it, just kept pulling with inhuman strength. "The bars aren't going to hold forever," Eugene said, his voice laced with despair. "We need to do something now." He was right. I could see the welds where the bars connected to the frames starting to stress, see the concrete around the mounting points beginning to crack. Given enough time and enough force, they'd tear the bars right out of the wall. I looked at the keys again, looked at the weapon locker on the far wall, past the mass of infected, looked at Eugene, trapped in his cell just like me, and I made a decision. I'm gonna try to reach the keys. How? You can't even open your cell door. I can reach through the bars. If I lay flat, get my arm through at the bottom, I might be able to hook them. You'll never reach that far. It's gotta be 4 feet. 3.5, maybe less. I was already moving, dropping to the floor, pressing my face against the concrete, the dust gritty against my cheek. The infected above me went into a frenzy, reaching down, trying to grab my hair, my clothes. I could feel fingers brush my back, could hear them moaning louder, a low guttural growl. I shoved my arm through the gap at the bottom of the bars, stretched as far as I could, shoulders screaming in protest. My fingers brushed empty air, about 2 feet short of the keys. Damn it! I pulled back, and something grabbed my sleeve. I yanked hard, heard fabric tear, but got free. "It's too far," Eugene said, his voice flat. "You can't reach it." There has to be a way. I looked around my cell desperately. The bench, the toilet, the thin mattress on the bench. Nothing I could use to extend my reach. Then I saw Talbot's body, still lying by the weapon locker where Lou had shot him. His duty belt was still attached, radio and baton dangling from it. "The baton?" I said, a spark of desperate hope. "If I can get that baton, I can use it to pull the keys closer." "And how are you going to get the baton? It's 15 feet away, and there's 24 of those things between you and it." "I don't know yet, but it's the only chance we've got." A crash from Eugene's cell made me turn. One of the bars had torn partially free from the wall, tilting inward at a dangerous angle. The infected were pulling on it, working it back and forth, widening the gap. "My cell!" Eugene backed away from the bars, his eyes wide with fear. "They're going to get through." He was right. The bar was coming loose, and when it did, they'd have access. It might take them a while to fit through the gap, but they'd get in eventually. And when they did, Eugene was dead. I looked at my own cell. The bars were holding better, but the thing that had been Lou was still pulling on them with mechanical persistence. Given enough time, my cell would fail too. We were out of time. "Lou!" I shouted at the thing on the other side of the bars, knowing it was useless, but unable to stop myself. "If you can hear me, if there's anything left of you in there, help us. Push the keys. That's all you have to do. Just push them toward the cell." It stopped pulling, tilted its head, and for one impossible second, I thought I saw something in those dead eyes. Recognition, understanding. Then it grabbed the bars and resumed pulling, and I knew Lou was truly gone. The bar in Eugene's cell tore completely free. It fell to the floor with a clang that echoed sickeningly in the station, leaving a gap, maybe 8 inches wide. The infected immediately started pushing through, their bodies compressing, squeezing into the opening. No! Eugene grabbed the loose bar and tried to wedge it back into place, but they were pushing too hard. He couldn't hold them. I had to do something, had to try. I grabbed the bench in my cell, a solid metal frame bolted to the floor, and put my weight on it. It didn't budge, but the mattress on top was held in place by thin straps. I tore them loose, pulling the mattress free, rolled it into a tight cylinder. It wasn't long enough to reach the keys, but maybe it could reach Talbot's body, reach the baton. The infected in front of my cell were packed too tight for me to reach through the bars at standing height. But at the bottom, where I tried before, there was slightly more room. If I could just hurry. Eugene! One of the infected had gotten its head and shoulders through the gap in his cell. He was holding it back with the loose bar, but barely. I dropped to the floor again, shoving the rolled mattress through the gap at the bottom of the bars. Pushed it as far as I could, angling it toward Talbot's body. Not far enough. I was still 3 feet short. I pulled it back, tried a different angle. This time, I got it within 2 feet of the body, close enough that if I unrolled it, an infected stepped on the mattress. Its weight pinned it to the floor, and when I pulled, it wouldn't budge. Damn it, move! I yanked harder. The infected stumbled, falling to its knees. The mattress came free, and I unrolled it as far as it would go, creating a fabric path that almost reached Talbot. Almost. Eugene, I need your help. Kinda busy. He was still fighting the infected, trying to squeeze through his bars. It had gotten one arm through now, grasping at him while he kept it at bay with the bar. Your mattress, your bench, anything you can push through the bars. He looked at me like I was crazy, but then he understood. If we could create 2 paths from our cells that met in the middle, we might be able to move the keys between us, get them close enough for one of us to reach. Eugene abandoned his fight with the infected for a moment, turning to tear his mattress free. The infected immediately surged forward, getting its shoulder through the gap. But Eugene was faster. He rolled his mattress and shoved it through the bars at the bottom of his cell, angling it toward mine. The 2 mattresses formed a rough V-shape, the points almost touching in the middle of the station, but they still weren't connected. We needed something to bridge the gap. Wait, Eugene said, his breath coming in ragged gasps. My jacket! He stripped off the paint-stained jacket and wadded it up, using the bar to push it through the gap in his cell. It fell on the floor between our 2 mattresses. Now what? He asked, panting. Now we use the mattresses to sweep the keys onto the jacket, then we pull the jacket to one of our cells. It was desperate, insane, but it was all we had. I pulled my mattress back, adjusted the angle, and shoved it forward again. This time, I aimed for the keys, trying to knock them toward the jacket with the edge of the mattress. Missed by inches. Eugene was fighting the infected again. It had gotten both arms through now and was pulling itself forward, jaw snapping. He brought the bar down on his head, hard enough to crack bone, but it kept coming. I tried again, shoved the mattress forward, swept it in an arc, felt it connect with something solid. The keys moved, slid 6 inches across the floor, closer to Eugene's jacket. Yes! I pulled back, tried again. Another sweep, another 6 inches. The keys were on the jacket now. Eugene, pull your jacket toward you. He couldn't. He was using both hands to fight the infected. Now there were 2 of them pushing through his cell, and he could barely hold them back. I had to do it from my side. Had to somehow hook the jacket with my mattress and pull it toward my cell. I angled the mattress, shoved it forward, trying to get the edge under the jacket. The fabric caught. I pulled carefully, and the jacket moved an inch, then another, but it was pulling toward Eugene's cell, not mine. I was dragging it the wrong direction. I repositioned, tried from a different angle. This time, the jacket moved sideways, parallel to both cells, still not close enough for either of us to reach. The infected in Eugene's cell had gotten its head through. Eugene brought the bar down on it repeatedly, but it wouldn't stop, wouldn't die. Blood and worse covered the floor of his cell. "I can't hold them," he screamed. I swept the mattress again, harder this time. The jacket skidded across the floor, keys jangling, stopped 2 feet from my cell door. Close enough. I dropped to the floor, shoved my arm through the bars at the bottom, stretched until my shoulder felt like it would dislocate. My fingers brushed the jacket fabric. Almost. I pressed my face against the concrete, flattening myself as much as possible, stretched again. This time, my fingers hooked the edge of the jacket. I pulled carefully, felt it slide toward me. Inch by inch, the keys were getting closer. Eugene's bar clattered to the floor. The infected surged through the gap in his cell, and he scrambled backward, pressing himself into the corner. "I got it," I shouted, fingers closing on the key ring. I pulled my arm back through the bars, the metal scraping my skin raw, but I had them. The keys were in my hand. I stood, fumbling with the ring, trying to find the right key for my cell door. There had to be a dozen keys, all different sizes and shapes. Eugene was screaming. The infected had him cornered, reaching for him, jaws snapping. He kicked at them, punched them, but there were too many. I found a key that looked right, shoved it into my cell lock with shaking hands. It didn't turn. Wrong key. Tried another. This one didn't even fit. Eugene went down under a mass of bodies. His screaming changed pitch, became something primal and terrified. Third key. This one fit. Turned. The lock clicked open. The cell door swung wide. And I stepped out into hell. The moment I stepped out of the cell, 3 of them turned toward me, their heads snapping in unison. I didn't think. Grabbed Talbot's baton, a solid length of metal, and swung at the nearest infected. The metal connected with its skull with a wet crack. It dropped. 2 more came at me, staggering, moaning. I backed toward the weapon locker, fumbling with the keys in my left hand while swinging the baton one-handed with my right. Caught one in the jaw, a sickening crunch, missed the other. It grabbed my shirt, its clammy hand clamping onto the fabric, pulling me off balance. I fell backward against the locker, the cold steel biting into my spine, and his face was right there. Gray skin, dead eyes, jaw open and wide, a gurgle rising from its throat. I jammed the baton into its mouth, pushing back with all my strength, its teeth scraping the metal. Black fluid dripped onto my hands. With my other hand, still fumbling with the key ring, I found the brass key, shoved it into the weapon locker. The door swung open, revealing a rack of shotguns, rifles, pistols. Shotgun right there, gleaming in the dim light. I dropped the baton, grabbed the shotgun, its weight a sudden, reassuring presence in my hands. Without aiming, I fired point blank into the infected's face. It dropped, a wet splat against the linoleum. I was already pumping the shotgun, turning, firing at the next one. The blast took it in the chest. It stumbled, but didn't fall, just kept reaching. "Head!" I screamed, a primal sound ripping from my throat. "Shoot the head!" I adjusted my aim, a fraction of a second, and fired again. The infected skull exploded, showering the wall with a horrifying mist. Eugene's screaming had stopped. I turned toward his cell, already knowing. They had him on the ground, 5 of them tearing at him. His body jerked less and less each time. Blood pooled beneath him, turning the concrete a morbid crimson. "Eugene!" I fired into the mass. One dropped, its head snapping back at an impossible angle. I pumped the shotgun again, fired, and another fell, its movement ceasing. But it was too late. Eugene's movement stopped. His eyes stared at nothing, turning milky and gray, joining the gid. I'd failed him. Been seconds too slow. The guilt was a bitter ash in my mouth. The thing that had been Lou turned toward me, faster than the others, more aggressive, a silent hunter. I raised the shotgun, but couldn't pull the trigger. This was Lou, the cop who tried to protect us, the man who'd given me absolution. The hesitation almost killed me. It closed the distance fast, a blur of gray. I barely got the shotgun up to block its reaching hands. Its strength was incredible, pressing down on the barrel, a monstrous power. I pulled the trigger. The blast caught it in the shoulder, spinning it around, but it didn't fall, just turned back, its dead eyes locked on me. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words barely audible. I aimed for the head and fired. The thing that had been Officer Liu collapsed, a lifeless heap. The name tag, Liu R, hit the floor with a small metallic clink. More were coming through the broken barricade. The shotgun clicked empty. I grabbed shells, hands shaking, fumbling, dropped half of them, loaded 4, then grabbed a pistol instead, feeling its cold, solid weight in my hand. I lined up the sights and fired. The recoil surprised me, sent the shot high, but the second connected. Center of the forehead. It dropped. 3 more pushed through the splintered doorway. I fired methodically. 2 dropped. The third took 2 rounds to finally go down. The pistol clicked empty. I reloaded, the mechanical clicks loud in the suddenly quieter station. And that's when I heard it. Pounding from the back. The break room. "Help!" A woman's voice, desperate, raw with terror. "Is anyone in there? Please, they're everywhere." I looked at the front entrance, still packed with infected. Looked at the back door. Looked at Eugene's body, now surrounded by a growing pool of blood. Every instinct screamed to stay put, to conserve what little ammunition I had. But that voice, desperate, human. I grabbed the shotgun, loaded it, and ran toward the back. "How many of you?" I shouted, my voice hoarse. "3! There's 3 of us! Please, they're coming!" I yanked the break room door open. 2 women and a man stumbled through, their faces pale with shock and fear. Behind them, maybe a dozen infected in the alley, drawn by the sound, all turning toward the open door. "Inside now!" I fired past them, the shotgun blast dropping the closest one. The man slammed the door shut, and I threw the deadbolt. Bodies hit the door immediately from the alley side. "The front," one woman shouted. Young, maybe 20, blood on her sleeve, eyes wide with terror. "We can go out the front." "Front's worse," I said, backing away from the break room door, which was now groaning under assault. "We need to—" I stopped. The main room. It was full of them, 20 at least. They'd poured through the failed barricade, filling every inch. Some feeding on Eugene, others milling around aimlessly, their guttural moans a constant drone. And they all turned toward us at once. "Weapon locker," I said, backing toward it, pointing with my shotgun. "Get armed." They scrambled to the locker, their movements clumsy with panic. The older woman, 40-something, wearing blood-spattered scrubs, grabbed a rifle. The man took a pistol. The young woman froze, eyes darting from the incoming horde to the weapons, unable to choose. "Can you shoot?" I asked her, my voice sharp. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Then get behind us." The infected advanced, slow, relentless, moaning that horrible sound. I fired the shotgun until it clicked empty, dropped it, and grabbed the rifle, its cold metal of familiar comfort. Fired until that was empty too. The woman in scrubs was shooting, controlled bursts, dropping infected one by one with surprising accuracy. The man was firing wildly, his pistol shots ineffective, but there were too many. For every one we dropped, more pushed through the barricade. The station floor was covered in bodies, a grotesque carpet. "We can't hold this," the woman in scrubs shouted, her voice strained. "Where?" I fired the pistol, dropping another. "There's nowhere to go. The cells, the bars are still intact." She was right. My cell, though tested, had held. "Go." I fired to cover them, spraying bullets into the horde. "Get in my cell." They ran. The young woman first, then the man, his eyes wild. The woman in scrubs stayed with me, firing methodically, dropping 3 before her rifle clicked empty. "Your turn," she said, grabbing my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. We ran together, firing pistols behind us, the screams of the infected a chorus of death. We made it to the cell, scrambled inside. The man pulled the door shut, and I slammed the lock into place. The infected swarmed the bars immediately, pressing against them, reaching through the gaps, but they held. We were safe. For now. The 4 of us collapsed against the back wall, breathing hard, our lungs burning. The young woman, Julie, cried silently, her face buried in her knees. The man, hollow-eyed and estant, stared at nothing. The woman in scrubs, Riley, checked her ammunition, her movements calm, practiced. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice hoarse, "for opening the door." "Most people aren't trapped in a police station with a horde of zombies," I said, the word feeling strange on my tongue. Zombies. She laughed, a short, bitter sound devoid of humor. "Guess that's what they are." "What happened out there?" "Bad. The whole city's gone. Maybe the whole state." She set her rifle aside, her gaze distant. "I'm Riley. I was working at Riverside Memorial when it started. The hospital, 30 minutes tops." "I'm Julie," the young woman said, her voice shaking, muffled. "I was at school. Everyone just started biting each other. I ran." The man didn't introduce himself, just sat there staring, a profound emptiness in his eyes. I checked my ammunition, 2 bullets in the pistol. Maybe half a box of shotgun shells scattered across the floor in the main room, impossible to retrieve. Not enough. Outside the cell, the infected continued their assault. Most had given up, wandering aimlessly or feeding on Eugene's mangled corpse. But a dozen remained focused, pulling on the bars, testing them, their moans a constant, low thrum. The sun was setting, orange and red light painting the sky through the broken window. 7 p.m. 12 hours since I'd hit that woman. 12 hours since the world ended. "We can't stay here," Riley said, her voice firm, breaking the silence. "When it gets dark, there'll be more. This station's going to be packed." "So what do you suggest?" I asked, looking at the 2 bullets in my hand. "We wait until they thin out, early morning, then we run." "Run where?" She didn't have an answer. The man finally spoke. His voice was flat, dead. "Doesn't matter. We're all going to die anyway." "Shut up," Julie snapped, her head snapping up, her small frame trembling with rage. "We're alive. That means something." "My wife wasn't alive. My daughter wasn't alive." His voice was a monotone. "I watched them turn into those things." Silence fell. What was there to say? We'd all lost people. Being alive just meant we got to watch longer. The infected outside suddenly went quiet. All of them. They stopped moaning, they stopped pulling. Just stood there swaying, their heads cocked as if listening. "What are they doing?" Julie whispered, her eyes wide with a new kind of fear. Then, as one, they turned toward the front entrance and shuffled out. Within a minute, the station was nearly empty, leaving only the dead and the debris. "Where are they going?" Riley moved to the bars, peering through the window. Through the glass, I could see them streaming down Main Street. Hundreds, maybe thousands, all moving with apparent purpose, a silent, gray river. "Something's drawing them away," I said. An explosion, distant but massive. The windows rattled. Car alarms started blaring, a mournful symphony. To the east, a massive fireball rose into the darkening sky, black smoke billowing upward, painting the horizon in shades of fire and ash. "Military," Riley said, her voice grim. "They're bombing the city." We moved to the high window, all of us. "They're trying to contain it," Riley continued, her face illuminated by the distant inferno. "Will it work?" Julie asked, her voice small. Riley looked at her, her eyes filled with a terrible certainty. "No, this isn't something you can bomb away. Anyone who dies becomes one of them." Another explosion, closer this time. The building shook violently. Ceiling tiles fell, scattering dust and debris. "We need to leave. This station won't survive if they keep bombing." "Leave and go where?" the man asked, his voice still flat. "We find a vehicle, drive out of the city, head for the countryside." Riley checked her rifle, her hand steady now. "I've got family in Nashville, if they're still alive." "They're not," the man said flatly. Julie stood up. She was small, but her voice was strong, imbued with a fierce, fragile hope. "I don't care how hopeless it seems. I'm not giving up. My mom's out there, and I'm going to find her." "Your mom's probably one of them now," the man said, his face devoid of empathy. Julie slapped him hard. The sound cracked in the quiet station. "Don't you dare take away my hope. It's all I have left." He touched his cheek. Then something in his face cracked and he started crying. Deep sobs that shook his whole body, tears streaming down his face. Riley put a hand on his shoulder, just sat with him, offering silent comfort. I moved back to the bars. Eugene's body was still on the floor, but it was moving now, twitching. The fingers flexed, the head began to lift. I raised my pistol and fired. The shot took him in the temple. The movement stopped. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "You deserved better." The station was mostly quiet now, except for the distant moaning and the rhythmic, terrifying thud of explosions. "We wait until midnight," I said. "Give the infected time to spread out, then we move." We settled in to wait. Riley found some protein bars in one of the desks and distributed them. Stale and tasteless, but we ate them, our hunger overriding our disgust. The man finally introduced himself. "Zach, my name's Zach. I'm sorry for what I said. About your mom," he added, looking at Julie. "It's okay," Julie said, her voice soft. "We're all scared." The hours crept by. 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. At 11:30, the few remaining infected in the station suddenly went still again. Then they turned and shuffled out, joining the unseen tide in the streets. "Now," I said, pushing myself up from the floor, the cold metal bench having left an imprint on my back. "This is our chance." We unlocked the cell and stepped out carefully, our footsteps echoing in the silence. The station was almost empty, just 3 infected remaining, too damaged to move, lying inert amongst the debris and bodies. I put them down with quick headshots, then searched for ammunition. Found 2 boxes of shells, another magazine for the rifle. "Keys," Riley said, jingling a set she'd found on Lou's desk, "for the cruiser out front." We moved to the front entrance, stepping over bodies, the smell of decay now almost overwhelming. The cruiser was right there, its paint peeling, but miraculously intact. The engine turned over with a cough and a roar when Riley tried the key. "Get in!" I covered them with a shotgun. Riley driving, Zach passenger, Julie in the back. I climbed in last as infected rounded the corner, drawn by the engine's rumble. "Go!" I shouted. Riley hit the gas. The cruiser lurched forward, bounced over a still body, and accelerated, tires squealing. The infected gave chase, a wave of gray horror, but we were faster. We drove through the burning city, weaving around abandoned cars and wandering infected. Riley drove with both hands tight on the wheel, her knuckles white. Zach navigated, his eyes constantly scanning. Julie pressed her face against the window, looking, always looking, for her mother. I watched the station disappear in the side mirror, the place where I'd spent the worst 12 hours of my life, where I'd watched good people die, where I'd killed for the first time, but also where I'd survived, where I'd saved 3 people, where I'd maybe, just maybe, redeemed myself. We hit the city limits at midnight, exactly 12 hours since Lou arrested me, 12 hours since normalcy died. The countryside opened before us, dark and empty, a vast expanse stretching into the unknown. Somewhere out there were more survivors, more infected, more horror, but also hope. "Where to?" Riley asked, her voice strained but steady. I looked at the 3 of them, at Zach, still grieving but alive, at Julie, still hoping, at Riley, still fighting, at my new, unexpected family. "North," I said, the word a declaration. "Away from the cities, we find somewhere defensible." "You think there's an end to this?" Zach asked, his voice small, a fragile question in the vast darkness. I thought about Lou, about Eugene, about the woman I'd hit who'd started this nightmare, about the thousands dead in 12 hours. "No," I said honestly, the truth a cold weight. "I don't think this ends. This is how the world is now. But we're still alive. That has to mean something. Riley nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the endless road. It means we keep going. One day at a time, Julie corrected, her voice still quiet but resolute. 1 hour if we have to, Zach added, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. The cruiser's headlights cut through the darkness as we drove, leaving the burning city behind, a beacon of destruction. Somewhere behind us, Officer Lou was dead. Eugene was dead. The old world was dead. But we were alive. And as long as we were alive, there was still a chance, still a reason to fight. The dashboard clock read 12 a.m., new day. I loaded shells into the shotgun while Riley drove into the darkness. 12 hours in hell had taught me everything about this new world. It was violent, terrifying, unforgiving, but it was survivable. And that's exactly what I intended to do, survive. The road ahead was shrouded in shadows, the vast wilderness hinting at dangers unseen. The cruiser's engine droned, a fragile lullaby against the backdrop of a broken world. We were out of the city, but the real journey, the true test, had just begun. Because what was waiting for us in the quiet, isolated corners of this new world was perhaps even more insidious than the hungry dead. It was the unknown. And the human heart stripped bare.